What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. Is it Sunday yet? This week is going to absolutely drag. I think everyone can kind of feel that already, but a lot of news to discuss. I have my grades done for the offense from Packers-Rams, so I want to go over that today. But let's start off with some news. First of all, the big news of the day is that Vita Vea, the Buccaneers' stud defensive tackle, who was playing the best ball of his career before he got injured, did not play against the Packers in Week 6 earlier this year, is going to be, I guess, activated from injured reserve to practice. That does not mean necessarily that he's going to play, but that he's going to start practicing as soon as Wednesday. And the report was that he could play as early as Sunday. Now, let's remember what we just talked about yesterday, right? Raven Green, Tyler Ervin, what I had mentioned yesterday is that it would surprise me even if they were activated and started practicing this week, if they were all of a sudden ready to go for Sunday's game, because if they were getting that close, likely they would have been activated at some point last week, started to practice, at least go through walkthroughs, and then, hopefully practice in full this week with an opportunity to go a week later. This very well could be a situation where Vita Vea is, just starting to get ready to practice, is nowhere near ready to actually play in a game, and might need a couple weeks still to prepare and get his legs underneath him. And this is more of a move that ultimately would get him ready for the Super Bowl should Tampa Bay make it that far. We just simply don't know enough at this point if Vita Vea is going to be available or not, but definitely one more thing for Green Bay to have to worry about. I think hopefully, everyone's maybe thinking that this is more gamesmanship and just giving something more Green Bay has to game plan for. But, listen, hopefully he's able to play for, if you're Tampa Bay. You always want to see the best two teams faced off against each other with their best possible players. We know that's not going to happen every year. David Bakhtiari is a great example of that with Green Bay. But, Vita Vea is a tremendous player. They spent a first-round draft pick on him for his sake. Hope he's ready to go. We'll see what happens, but that's obviously the big news. It kind of came out of nowhere. I don't know that anyone was necessarily expecting him to get ready to practice and potentially play. Again, I still think it could be a red herring, and we don't know anywhere near for certain if he's going to be able to go. And even if he is able to go, is it more of 5 to 10 snaps? Is it 10 to 12? Is he himself? Is it like Aaron Donald, where he's a shell of himself and not really, the player that you want out on the field? I go back and watch that Rams-Packers tape. Not only was, Aaron Donald a shell of himself and not, causing havoc and things like that, he was a liability at times out on the field. So, you don't necessarily want to bring somebody back too soon either, but that's definitely one big piece of news that happened on Monday, and it's definitely going to be worth monitoring the injury report for Vita Vea the remainder of the week. There was also a report that Antonio Brown got his knee scoped, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on as well. Seemed like he banged it up a little bit before halftime, did come back and play in that game. You did see a little bit more of Miller and Johnson and those guys later in the game, so maybe it was giving them some issues, but that's going to be another injury to kind of keep an eye on for Tampa Bay. Switch things around. Let's talk about Green Bay. Matt LaFleur had his first, press conference of the week, was asked about A.J. Dillon, basically avoided the question and didn't say for sure. Basically said that, AJ hasn't been in the building from a practice standpoint yet, and they'll kind of wait and see what happens on Wednesday. He did say he's hopeful that they'll get AJ back and ready to go this week, but it almost legitimately seemed like an answer of, I have no idea and I hope he's back, more than we're hopeful, we think we've got good news on him and he's going to be back. But at least at this point, I think the good news here is that it wasn't anything where he's like, nope, AJ's going to go on IR and is done for the year, or, he has no chance of playing, or whatever the case may be. This was legitimately an issue where he said, we're hopeful that he can go. So again, I took it more in the context that he may not know, or at least is not willing to divulge anything at this point. But again, I'm going to take it as good news that it's not something major and that they've put him on IR already and just haven't announced it or anything like that. All right, let's go over some of my offensive grades for Packers-Rams this past week. And before I even get to the specific grades themselves, one thing stood out to me offensively for Green Bay, and that's that they actually left a lot of meat on the bone. And that's crazy to think about, right? I'm actually saying this more as a positive than I am as a negative, because they just faced the number one defense. They put up 30 plus points on 450, almost 500 yards of total offense. And they legitimately left points and plays and a lot of stuff still out on the field that they could have executed better on. I start with I start with obviously you have the missed shot to MVS. Alan Lazard drops a pass down the field that likely would have, either of those likely would have resulted in points. Aaron Rodgers misses Devontae Adams on the out and up. That drive ended in a field goal. If he hits him there, that's probably a touchdown based on where Devontae was on the play. You've got a couple throws by Aaron Rodgers that technically didn't take points off the board, but could have with a couple interceptable passes right before halftime. You've also got on the first drive, there were a couple plays, one right off the fingertips of MVS, another where MVS kind of comes open and Rodgers doesn't see him. They left a lot on the field. Even in the running game, Matt LaFleur schemed up a ton of 5-on-5s on offense, and this was just gorgeous game planning on his part, right? So you've got two safeties that wanted to stay deep. That's what the Rams love to do. They've got two, wide receiver / tight ends on one side or wide receiver on the other side. They threw different formations at him, but primarily that's what it was. Dillon and AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones in the backfield. Jones goes in motion, somebody goes with him, and all of a sudden, with those two safeties back and a player assigned to each of the players on the outside, you've basically got 3 or 4 down linemen and 1 or 2 linebackers, and which resulted in a 5 offensive linemen versus 5 defensive players for the Rams, and you got 5-on-5 formations. There's a couple of those where if it were blocked a little bit better, and it should have been blocked a little bit better, A.J. Dillon is going to have a ton of space. Instead, in a few of them he did, but on a couple he got stopped short on short gains. And there was, again, more meat on the bone to be had there. If you're getting 5-on-5s, those are massively advantageous for the offense. Remember, A.J. Dillon was like the master of seeing 8 and 9 man boxes in college. And now all of a sudden he's seen a 5-on-5. That's like, his eyes must be just super wide. But Green Bay didn't always block it up perfectly. So that's something that Green Bay can work on as well. And again, this isn't to nitpick at the Packers offense, who again just put up 30 plus points on the Rams and almost 500 yards. But that's to say they just played one of the best defenses in football, one of the best defensive minds in football, who just got the head coaching job with the Chargers. And they had way more out there that they could have even done. I mean, legitimately high 40s in this game was out there for them if they just execute on a few more plays, in my opinion, which again is crazy to say. So it's good that you get a couple of those snafus out of the way, and maybe, it's a little bit of rust from 2 weeks off before, from Chicago game up until that past game. But I think they got it out of their system, and hopefully they're ready to execute on all cylinders against Tampa Bay. But again, I think it's overall a positive that they had still, more points out there that they left on the board, and hopefully they can clean some of that up and just bring it to Tampa Bay, which would be absolutely phenomenal. All right, actually get to the grades here. Number 1 on my grades was Aaron Jones, and just an all-around great performance from him. You look at, obviously what he did on the 60-yard run. There was the one run where he did the double spin move, just tap and circle on the PlayStation controller. I think it's B on an Xbox, but who the hell uses an Xbox? PS, way better. Everyone knows this. I'm sure I won't see any comments or dislikes on this for that comment. But anyway, I just thought he had a really fantastic game. Had one play where he picked up pass protection really, really well. I didn't really use him a ton in the passing game. He did have one go off of his hands, but had he caught it, it would have been like a 3 or 4 yard loss probably anyway. But overall, just loved what Aaron Jones did in this game. Ran hard. I mean, this is just vintage Aaron Jones, right? Everything that we're going to say, running hard, breaking tackles, being tough to get down, always falling forward. These are the things that we talk about with Aaron Jones all year. We saw it in spades against against the LA Rams on Saturday, and just loved what he put on tape. Number 2, Lucas Patrick. Loved Lucas Patrick in this game. And I go back to left guard versus right guard. Struggled at left guard. Struggled there against Carolina. Struggled there in the other games he played at left guard. At right guard this season, he's been really good, and I don't think he's gotten the credit that he deserves for how he's played there. Was the best offensive lineman on Saturday, was consistently getting movement in the running game, was very rarely giving up any pressure. I just thought this was a tremendously consistent performance from Patrick, and again, when you're down to David Bakhtiari and those sorts of things, everyone on that offensive line needs to step up. I thought Lucas Patrick stepped up big. And again, if you would have told me that, Lucas Patrick was the second highest rated player, and he was right there with Aaron Jones as number 1 overall for this game, I loved what Patrick did. And again, and I've said this multiple times before, but of all the offensive linemen, David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Corey Linsley, whoever you want to put in that conversation, Billy Turner, Lucas Patrick is usually the one that has the 2 or 3 most dominant blocks in every game. He's very physical at the point of attack. He's always hunting for work. And this was probably his best performance of the season when Green Bay definitely could use it most. And the interior of that offensive line, Elton Jenkins, Corey Linsley, Lucas Patrick, what they were able to do to get movement in the middle of that Rams defensive line and get the running game going with Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Jamal Williams was such a huge point in this game. But Lucas Patrick was the best of the 3. And then number 3, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I'm guessing you probably weren't expecting Aaron Jones, Lucas Patrick, and MVS to be on my top 3. And if they were, you probably would have wondered if Green Bay won the game or not. But overall, MVS was fantastic in this game, and he did have the one that kind of went off his fingertips. It was a little bit high in the end zone, but outside of that, there was a play early in the game where he burst down the sidelines. Rodgers didn't see him, took the check down to Jones instead. Jones got like 15 yards on the play. It was a good play, but MVS was definitely, he screamed right past Jalen Ramsey, and there was no safety over the top. Could have had an opportunity for a score there. Another play, obviously the one that Rodgers completely missed. That's another play where if Rodgers hits him in stride, and to be fair, if MVS catches it, MVS is probably gone for a touchdown on that play, which is probably like a 90-yard play. The big play of the game, the third down conversion where, it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, and MVS kind of gets it. It was a little bit behind him on the throw. MVS gets it and then has to kind of make a couple guys miss and reaches down for the first down. If they don't convert that, they probably punt in that situation. Rams get the ball back in the 4th quarter down 7. Instead, they convert 2 plays later was the deep bomb to Allen Lazard, game set match Packers. That was such a huge conversion in this game. Had a couple other receptions, blocked really well. Just a really sound overall game from MVS. Some honorable mentions: Davante Adams, Aaron Rodgers, Elton Jenkins, Jamal Williams, Robert Tonyan. All 5 of those guys were plus 0.8 or better, which is a really solid day. And, I just want to talk briefly about Aaron Rodgers. You saw some of the spectacular from him, right? The one that he ran in and pump faked, the play in the end zone where he's, could have taken a safety, but he's just buying time, super poised, finds Allen Lazard on the deep post. You've got Allen Lazard on the play that he did catch, even the one the one that he didn't catch. Even the one to Davante down the field where he threw it behind him, at least he gets it there. There was some pressure in his face. So you saw some great stuff. You also saw the miss to MVS, the miss to Davante. You saw the 2 interceptable balls before halftime. There were a couple checks, I think, that he had at the line. That one that he threw to Davante where he probably should have handed off. There was one other one like that as well. Didn't think this was, prime Aaron Rodgers in this game, which again is saying something when, you don't get the very best Aaron Rodgers and you're still able to put up 30 plus points in all the offense that they did in this game. So if Rodgers in this offense can play better than that against Tampa, I really like Green Bay's chances in that game. Let's go over my 3 lowest graded players before I get out of here. Number 1, A.J. Dillon. He was really the only one that had a negative grade. And of course, anytime you fumble in a playoff game, it's going to have a huge negative connotation that goes right alongside of it. Luckily, Aaron Rodgers able to pick that up, but that would have been a massive game-changing play. The Rams taking over in plus position, I believe down 7 at that point. I could be wrong on the score at that point, but I believe Green Bay was only up 7, and A.J. Dillon fumbles the ball. Rodgers picks it up, and thankfully, they're able to kind of continue that drive. But that obviously can't happen. And then I thought some of his rushing yards were just blocked up plays or 5-on-5 scenarios. Didn't think that he did a ton to make people miss on the second level. Had a couple nice runs, no mistake about it. But when you compare it against the fumble and what that could have meant, that's ultimately why he graded in the negative. Number 2, Equinemius St. Brown, just a small negative grade. Had a couple opportunities to get open, had trouble uncovering at times. Nothing egregious. Had a couple run plays where he probably could have blocked a little bit better, but was a very, very small negative grade. And then I literally didn't have anyone else grade in the negative. Tavon Austin was my 3rd lowest graded player, who had 1 snap and just went in jet motion on the play. Just had a neutral grade. There was no grade on that individual play. So he ends up with a 0.0. And because nobody else graded in the negative or neutral, that he ends up being my 3rd lowest graded player. So tough outcome for Tavon Austin, who plays in one play in the game, doesn't do anything on the play, and is just used as a decoy, and ends up as the 3rd lowest rated player. And of course, no negative here. I'm just kind of being facetious about Austin, but That goes to show how well Green Bay played in this game, that they literally only had 2 players graded in the negative. Dillon would not have graded in the negative had it not been for the fumble, and Equanimeous St. Brown was barely in the negative. They were darn close to not having any players graded in the negative, which I've never had before. So hell of a game for Green Bay offensively and just limiting mistakes and negative plays. That's going to do it for me. I will be back tomorrow with my defensive grades and any more breaking news on Bucks, Packers, or anything else around the NFL. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure to check out Jake Morley on today's audio version of the Pack-A-Day podcast. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, and as always, go Pack, go.